What's going on, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? We gonna be talking about the Houston Rockets today. Since getting rid of James Harden in 2021, it has been a slow and ugly rebuild for this Houston Rocket franchise. For 3 straight seasons, so going from 2020, 2021 to 2022, 23, they were one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in basketball. They were up there with a team like the Detroit Pistons at the time. Essentially, the Rockets and Pistons are what people consider the Pelicans and Wizards to be right now. After the 2022-23 campaign, they fired Steven Silas, who was their head coach at the time. They got him from the Dallas Mavericks in 2021, I believe, and they hired Ime Udoka, who was fired from the Boston Celtics the season after he helped coach that team to the finals. Obviously, I'm not going to get into that controversy because y'all can scroll through my old timeline and find that video for yourself. I talk about the Ime Udoka controversy between him and the Boston Celtics front office. And in that 2023 offseason, they drafted Amen Thompson, who is Asar's twin brother. I touched a little bit on Asar in my Pistons video. And then they signed a lot of veterans. They signed Fred VanVleet from the Toronto Raptors, and then Jeff Green, who at the time came off a championship with Denver, and they signed Dillon Brooks as well, ultimately giving them a defensive, gritty mentality. Now, in the 2023-24 campaign, the Rockets were kind of under the radar, and they were kind of still looking like they were going to be a really bad team, even with Ime's coaching experience and then the vets on their team. But at the end of the 2023-24 season, they went on an 11-game winning streak facing the Golden State Warriors. Ultimately, they lost to Golden State, and I think they lost to Dallas in that overtime game at the end of the season, ultimately knocking them out of playoff contention. The season after, the Rockets were officially back on the map. They became the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, and they faced Shai Gilgeous and the Thunder in the, the NBA Cup in-season tournament. I don't know what that thing is called anymore. But essentially, the Rockets were back in full force, and they were back and ready to compete. Ime did one hell of a job with that roster, with the developments of guys like Jalen Green at the time, Alfred Şengün. Fred VanVleet was starting to really find himself a nice niche in Houston. Amen Thompson was starting to look like a two-way star at the time. And like I alluded to earlier, Dillon Brooks gave the team a gritty defensive edge. They looked like a really well-oiled machine out there. However, the 2025 playoffs rolled around, and just like in 2018, they faced the Golden State Warriors, and just like in 2018, they had home court advantage against the Warriors the whole entire series. Ultimately, they fell down 3-1 after blowing, I think it was Game 4 where they lost by 3? And the Houston Rockets nearly pulled off a 3-1 comeback, which they would have been the 12th team in NBA history to do so. It would have been their second time coming back down 3-1 in their franchise history. They came back in 2015 against the LA Clippers, and they would have been the first team since the Denver Nuggets to come back down 3-1 in a playoff series. However, 2 things happened. Their half-court offense was absolute trash. And Buddy Hield, of all people, joined the list of all NBA playoff immortals. Obviously, shout out to Terrence Mann. Shout out to Grant Williams. Shout out to my guy Lonnie Walker IV. If you know, you know. And obviously, special shout out to the immortal Caleb Martin and Cody Zeller as well. If you're a Miami Heat fan, you would know. And also, it doesn't help that the inconsistencies of Jalen Green really reared its ugly head in this series as well. While Jalen had a pretty good regular 2025 season overall, he averaged 21 points a game, almost 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, shooting 42% from the field and 35% from 3. In the postseason, he only averaged 13.3 a game, shooting 37% from the field and 29.5% from 3. And those numbers are horrendous for a guy that was considered to be one of the major cornerstones of the Rockets' future with Alfred Şengün and Amen Thompson. So overall, the inconsistencies of Jalen Green became an ultimate factor, and their lack of a half-court offense played a major factor, which Charles Barkley criticized that on Inside the NBA, and I touched a bit on it on my series recap vid covering this series. And they ultimately bounced out of the first round in a Game 7 on a Sunday afternoon. But here comes May 22nd of 2025, the day that the NBA Finals Game 7 was set between the Thunder and the Pacers, and we got a magnificent blockbuster trade involving one Kevin Durant from the Phoenix Suns, to which that trade became the first 7-team trade in NBA history. Houston had to give up Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks, the draft rights to the number 10 overall pick, Kaman Malawak from Duke, Rasheer Fleming, and plenty of draft capital. In the case of the Phoenix Suns, this trade helps them because they got back a lot of stability that they lost when they made the trade for Bradley Beal. Obviously, for the rest of the teams that are involved, I'm not going to say all of them here. I'm just going to put this little screenshot for like a good couple seconds, pause to read. Now, initially when the trade broke out that day, and I don't know if I discussed this in my Game 7 series recap between the Thunder and the Pacers, I wasn't really a fan of this move until they made a lot more additions and re-signings in free agency. They re-signed Fred VanVleet to a good deal. They re-signed Steven Adams. They re-signed Jeff Green and Aaron Holiday. They re-signed Jayshawn Tate. They signed Dorian Finney-Smith, who played well when he was on my Lakers, and he was probably one of our better defenders in the playoffs trying to defend Anthony Edwards. And they got Josh Okogie, who I've seen him play with Phoenix and a bit of Minnesota. Good energy guy. He's not really Bruce Brown, but the guy hustles his butt off and he can play gritty defense when you need him to. And they got Clint Capella back. Now, I don't know if Clint Capella is going to have the same role that he did in Houston originally when he was playing with James Harden and Chris Paul later down the line. Especially now you have guys like Alfred Şengün and Steven Adams that are also centers. I know Clint Capella is going to see valuable minutes and he'll be a valuable rotational player under Ime Udoka. And because of those acquisitions that I named, I really started liking the Kevin Durant trade a lot more. For Houston, this definitely means championship or bust. The addition of KD, along with the growth of guys like Şengün, the growth of guys like Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd as well will get a bigger role. And then you have guys like Fred VanVleet and all that other stuff. Now this move makes them a title contender, and I do believe it'll be championship or bust. I also like this trade because it addresses a lot of weaknesses with Houston, particularly their half-court offense. Again, it sucked with Jalen Green. Now, Jalen was not the end-all be-all to why the Rockets stunk. His struggles, though, did not make the Rockets any better, especially since they already lack a half-court offense. KD's offensive skills, especially when it comes to being a really reliable shot creator. I mean, the guy is like a 25-plus point per game scorer, even at 37, 38 years old. I think it will address the Rockets' needs, especially in the half court, and when they need shot creation in the fourth quarter, which, if y'all saw those games where the Rockets lost, not only their half-court offense sucked, they really had no offense to run in the fourth quarter. With Kevin on the team, they actually have an offense to run because the guy can get his own shot. However, there are some genuine, valid concerns about the Houston Rockets adding a prolific scorer like Kevin Durant, especially when you have guys like Amen Thompson, Alfred Şengün. You can even count Fred VanVleet, for that matter, as guys that need the ball. And then, obviously, we can also count Jabari Smith Jr. I forgot about him. I'm reading an article from Newsweek.com where it highlights David Aldridge. Shout out to the NBA 2K community for skipping the guy. I'm sorry, DA, but you're still the GOAT at pregame intros, but then again, we all skipped you. Anyways, David Aldridge of The Athletic said, "I am not wholly sold that this is all going to be rainbows and unicorns. KD is still a great scorer, but like all great scorers, he needs the ball. So do Alfred Şengün, Amen Thompson, and Jabari Smith. Houston spent most of the last 4 years getting the ball to move better. Is isolating KD at the elbow the best way for this team to take the next step?" And the article also goes on to say, just like what we saw with Brooklyn and Phoenix in recent years, acquiring KD does not guarantee for you. The Nets were never able to break through with KD on the roster, albeit that one you could say is more of an exception to the rule because they were all decimated with injuries when it mattered most. And then Kyrie was falling out with the Nets front office and pretty much Mayor Eric Adams over the vaccine. James Harden gets traded to Philadelphia, and the Suns front office making the dumbest move possible, trading your best point guard that you've had in years for Bradley Beal, who you didn't really need. And you already gave up 2 reliable role players just to get KD. And also you had to give up a lot of draft capital to get the combination of both Beal and KD. And there is some genuine validity to those concerns from guys like David Aldridge and a lot of people who have critiqued this trade because Kevin is on the back end of his career. He'll be 38 in 2026. But in my personal opinion, I do think the Rockets will be fine. I do think the Rockets will be a genuine championship contender, and I do think because of the camaraderie he has with Steven Adams, the camaraderie he's had with Jeff Green, and his respect for Ime Udoka, even though Ime coached a great scheme against KD in the playoffs when he was the Celtics coach and KD was on the Nets, there's a lot of respect there and a lot of camaraderie. So I do think the Rockets will be fine. But I won't be surprised if they do fizzle out. And considering Kevin's history with his other teams and how, I don't want to say he quit, but his antics on how he wanted out of those teams, albeit all for different reasons, whether that be the Thunder, Golden State, Brooklyn, or the Suns. When things did not go well with those teams, KD ended up leaving. Now, is it all his fault? No. But if things do not work out with KD and the Rockets, the Rockets will look bad because of the fact they traded draft capital and 2 serviceable role players to get a guy like KD who is in the back end of his career. But Kevin Durant will also look bad because of, again, his history. It's already bad enough you joined a team that came back on you in 2016, and then you got into a spat with Draymond. You ended up leaving, and you even talked about with Kyrie Irving in the 2019 All-Star game, talking about there's 2 open roster spots in New York. You formed forces with James Harden in 2021. Obviously, that didn't work out either. And then you go to Phoenix, Arizona to play with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And even though they went on an 8-game winning streak in 2023, it still didn't work out because Chris ends up getting traded for Bradley Beal, and then you ended up getting moved because the Suns ended up being bad. And look, I am saying this with all genuine respect for KD. I've been a fan of KD since he came into the league. I wasn't really a fan of him when he went to Golden State, but when he got injured, I did start to really appreciate him a lot more when I didn't see him play at all in 2019-20. But even with that, I have to say it for what it is. If the Rockets do not get to the finals, or at least get to the conference finals and face Oklahoma City, because I do think they'll be in the conference finals again, it will look bad for both parties involved. But with all that being said, I think the Rockets will do just fine. I think they're the 3rd best team in the West. Obviously, I'm not going to be putting them over Oklahoma City and Denver, because I think those are the 2 best teams in the West, and those teams I think will have a chokehold on the West, but Houston will be number 3. And I do think they will make some huge noise in the playoffs. But again, will I be surprised if they fizzle out and Kevin Durant ends up going on a platitude like he did with all those other teams and leaving the Houston Rockets? No. But even with all that, I do think KD and the Rockets will work out just fine. I think KD will complement Şengün and Amin Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr., and I do think he'll buy into Ime Udoka's philosophy and system. But Houston fans, what do you guys think? Do you guys like the Kevin Durant trade? Do you hate it? Do you guys still wish you had Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and all that draft capital? Do you think the Houston Rockets will regress because of the fact you traded a young player and a grit and grind defensive guy that shaped your defensive identity for a guy that could put points on the board? Or do you guys think the addition of Kevin Durant will instantly boost Houston's chances of winning a title? And let me know y'all thoughts about the other signings that Houston made. Do you guys like the Josh Okogie, Dorian Finney-Smith, Clint Capella signings? Or do you guys think they could have signed someone better? Or, again, do you guys think they should have just kept the roster the way it is and kept on building? Because this is a two-way street. You get a prolific scorer that could really boost your chances of winning, but at the price of it, you lose young talent and draft capital. So let me know your thoughts below. Again, more off-season videos coming soon. I will have my gameplay videos out. I will have more coming out soon. Don't y'all worry. But we're about to see a very interesting battle in the West. And again, I think Denver, Houston, and Oklahoma City will have the upper and winning hand. But until my next video comes out, that is the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.